welcome back to Make Good Choices Monday. I'm Becky Amio, and if you want to hear how I caught my horse in a hay net like a fish, you're going to want to stick around and hear this story because this just happened and it could have been a disaster. Stick around. So I debated about doing this story last week, but I didn't have the footage that I wanted, and I should have taken some before pictures of this. But I was working a horse in the round pen, and I didn't see like the initial thing happen, but I kind of saw the aftermath. It was one of those moments where you just go, how in the heck did that happen? And you had to like put all the puzzle pieces together. So around here, I find that when the horses in the pens, the horses that are turned out, when everybody kind of picks their ears up and looks a certain direction, there's something going on that I need to go check out. And in this case, I'm working in the round pen, and the horse in the round pen, he just stopped what he was doing and froze and looked up to the pen where I have my 3 mares turned out. Now I have an old brood mare in there, I have my good barrel horse JJ in there, and then I have my new mare Fancy in there, and they're all getting along just fine and they're eating. Well, Fancy had stuck her head through the hay net, through a hole in the hay net, and got it stuck. Now, there was a time when we would just either pitch hay into the pens, and all winter long, a lot of times what we end up doing, because pitching hay gets to be too much, or like tracking through the snow, we're trying to make the chores as easy as possible. So sometimes we were putting, just a tractor scoop of hay in the pen when you had several horses in the pens or in the arena turned out. And in this case, we have recently upgraded, and we have these poly rings. And we have a hay net attached to the poly ring, and on the bottom we have a PVC pipe running around that's tied with string and zip ties. And I can lift this ring, so it's not a heavy duty metal ring, it's this light plastic ring, but it's really sturdy and it stands up to different temperatures, and it hasn't broken yet. We've had them for a couple years now. And so this ring I can lift up and put over top of a bale when JD puts a new bale into the pen for me with the tractor. And so so again, it's not real heavy, but it is kind of awkward, and if the wind is just right, it will blow it on me when I'm trying to put it up over a bale. So we're starting to get some tears in the net. It happens. And I hadn't repaired the tears in the net, and basically the repair entails just taking a piece of twine, baling twine, and looping it through, lacing it through, tying a knot, closing up those holes, because horses are sticking their head through, and lots of them do it. In fact, I've taken pictures of some of them standing there, sticking their head in. They have their head stuck in the net, and then they pull their head out all quietly, and they go about doing whatever they're going to do. Now, Fancy, she did it, and she panicked. And when I saw kind of the aftermath of what had happened, she must have panicked so bad that she had flipped the entire net and the ring off the bale, and she was dragging it around the pen and backing up with her head stuck in that hole. And the other 2 mares were panicking, and they were running around because they were being chased by this hay ring, and it was quite hilarious. And I made this frantic phone call to JD, like, I've got a horse stuck in a net. I'm going to need your help. I hadn't evaluated the situation yet. And I left the horse in the round pen where he was at, and I went running up to their big pen where they are. And by the time I got up there, she had stopped, and she was just stuck there with her head stuck in the net. And I'm like, oh dear God, please let her stand there so I can help her get her head out of this net. And she stood there and waited for me, and I was able to go up to her and pop the piece of the netting. I didn't even have to cut or anything, no knife or scissors needed. I was just able to pop the net off of her head and save her. And she was very relieved, but she was very crabby, and she didn't want me to touch her head or her ears, and she was weird about me touching around her muzzle. you know, I put the ring back over the bale. JD and I ended up getting some baling twine, and we ended up fixing all the little holes in the net. And, you know, thankfully, you know, she wasn't hurt. However, later on that afternoon, when I came back up to the pen, I tie her and JJ up in order to grain and give supplements to the older broodmare. And she didn't want to let me catch her, and I couldn't figure out why she didn't want to let me catch her. I just figured she was just sore by her ears, you know. And I ended up pulling the old mare out to let the old mare have her grain, and just left Fancy alone. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. You had a traumatic day. It's okay. And the next day I went in to get her. I realized that she had a bump on the top of her muzzle, and it was like a blister. And it was like she must have gotten her muzzle twisted in a little teeny square off of that net and pinched the heck out of herself. It was the equivalent to when we get a blood blister on our hand or something, you know, and we really need to kind of like cut it and release the pressure and let it bleed. And then sometimes we don't, so it just kind of does whatever it's going to do and it absorbs back into the body. I left it alone. I'm not a huge fan of messing too much with the horse's face, because if you make it a bad situation, then you know what? You're not haltering and you're not bridling that sucker for a long, long time. So I'm like, I'll just leave it alone for now. Hope for the best. And about 2 more days went by. She did finally let me catch her, but she was real touchy about her muzzle, and I was real careful with the halter putting it on her. And I just decided I wasn't going to work her that week. And she was real touchy about her ears. I'm sure she was sore. I mean, so she was stuck with her head in the net. And I'm going to insert some pictures here if I haven't already. And I mean, you know, to be able to pull that entire ring off the bale like she did. And the bale wasn't eaten down. It was a relatively new bale when she did this. So it had to pop clear off the round bale, and then she drug it around the pen with her. So you know, a couple days went by, a couple more days went by, and it bursted. And she was just kind of bleeding out of her muzzle right there. It wasn't terrible bad. It wasn't anything I wanted a doctor to mess with. I mean, it's the equivalent to having a blister, and you know how bad those things hurt. So I'm like, I'm leaving it alone. I'm not going to try to mess with this. As it was, she wasn't going to let me catch her. She was real touchy about her face. And so, you know, I wish I would have gotten a picture before and after. It was about the size of a quarter, maybe, not even that big. And it eventually, you know, dried up. It's flush with her muzzle now. It's just a tiny little scab, looks like a teeny little bit of road rash. I'm really happy with the way it healed without even doing anything to it, and it took less than a week, honestly. So, what can we learn from that, folks? Watch your hay nets. Pay more attention to the holes and the tears that the horses get into them. I mean, it's been a super effective tool for us. You know, we've got 7 head of horses in my arena right now that are horses that I've been working on through last summer into the fall, and then some in the winter. And we wanted to keep them all up close so I could keep working on them and trim feet as needed. And, you know, they're hard on things, but, you know, we've been able to save a lot of hay with these hay nets, and we've had very little waste, and there's not fighting around the hay bale or the hay ring. So, you know, they've been really effective for us. I've heard pros and cons about them so far. We've had a lot of good experience with them. But, you know, pay attention. You know, you always kind of got to do some regular maintenance around your place, and always double check to make sure there's nothing they can kill themselves on. And, you know, then it's up to them to make good choices. So there it is. I hope you guys have a wonderful Monday. I hope you guys make great choices this week. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video and you were entertained by it, please share it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.